Morning, everyone on our call, our attendees, our partners, the Mid-Beach Neighborhood Association, KW Property Management, and Eisinger Law. And I want to take a second and let you know that we appreciate you all for taking the time out of your day when you could be spending it anywhere and you're spending it with us. So thank you very much. My name is Joe Ferst. I'm the Regional Vice President of Business Development with Hotwire, and it's nice to see everyone and be a part of this today. So allow me to provide some background on Hotwire Communications. We're headquartered in Broward County with locations throughout Miami-Dade and the United States. You'll notice that we're not the typical cable provider once we get engaged, but we're a technology partner. We're focused on enhancing your association's connectivity to ensure the ultimate reliability, especially in circumstances where we're working from home like many of us today, to make sure that it works, make sure that the challenges are limited, and that you're able to scale in the future if you're leveraging it for your property, your business, your hotel, or your city network. And how do we do that? With our customer experience and the pillar of our company. But why call Hotwire? Because we're part of the community. Like I mentioned, we're here, we're headquartered here. Prior to this environment, you would have seen 5, 10, 15 Hotwire people at each individual networking event that we're a part of. And ultimately, that should show that we care. At the most fundamental level, our goal is to provide world-class white glove client service in order to ensure that we have measures in place, we have state-of-the-art infrastructure, and then we have our staff. Our staff is truly what differentiates us from anyone out there. And as I say it again, the client experience is a pillar and what we support every single day. The heart and soul of our company. We employ the most innovative, inspired, and caring employees in the industry, and our internal partners like Marcelo have the education and experience to understand the responsibility that we have to you, our company, and then when the opportunity arises to help when you're governing your association or business within the community. Now, whether it be Ari on the Bay, Square Station, Azure, Harbor House, One Hotel and Homes, Ocean One, Carillon, St. Regis, we're interested in working with you. We specialize in communication and the client experience to support the suite of services. On the most basic level, internet service, video, phone, Wi-Fi, and security options throughout your unit and throughout your properties. Across the residential bulk market, commercial businesses, hospitality services, as well as town and city technology projects like fiber builds and internet deployment. If you have a business, call us. If you have a hotel, call us. If you have an association that is interested in a double bulk service and you're not sure who we are, what we do, call me, call Marcelo, call any of us. We're very interested. In closing, we're here to fill the void with our client experience to provide telecommunication services within the community that we serve, and then we can all breathe easier that it's going to work. If everyone continues to move forward in this current environment, I wish you the best to be the best version of yourself. Good luck to our panelists today, and thank you very much for your time, and I hope to hear from anyone soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for those words. So starting from the left on my screen, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Sznajderman Sheir for a couple of words.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to speak with this great panel today, and hopefully we can impart some of our knowledge and experience and what's going on in this uncharted territory, because if I told you that I had all the answers, I don't, and it's an evolving situation day by day for most of our communities. Again, my name's Carolina Sheir. I'm a partner with Eisinger Law. Our firm is a boutique condominium association firm. We're a full service real estate firm, but we focus most of our practice on association representation. We represent about 700 associations throughout the state of Florida, and we really do pride ourselves in the efforts that we take to educate the community and work with our associations, because we think that an educated board, an educated member is a much more valuable team player. From my standpoint, I've had the pleasure for the very first time to be an adjunct professor at Nova Southeastern University, law school teaching condominium law. It's very interesting. And we routinely teach courses, CLEs for management companies as well as for your board member certifications. And obviously, we've had to adjust our way of practice, our way of dealing with our clients and our associations because of COVID, just like everybody else. But I will say that the opportunity to do these webinars, we reach a lot more people. It's quicker to the point. People can do it during our lunch period. So I think that this is something, unfortunately, we've had a lot of down things in this year, but this is actually a good thing that we've been able to connect in this manner and become more informed and continue our communication. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you, Carolina, and welcome. Look forward to a lively discussion. Next panelist, Mr. Bruce Masia from KW Property Management. Bruce, you're on mute.
I think that is the statement of the year. You're on mute. I think everyone's going to say that. That's going to be the slogan of the year. You're on mute. But thank you, Marcelo. Thank you to Hotwire to allow me to join this panel today with Anamarie and Carolina and yourself. And really excited, for us to take some questions and maybe try to answer some things from homeowners that are out there and condominium boards that need our expertise that are there. Just a little bit about myself. I've been with KW for a little over 11 years. I'm the regional vice president for KW in the areas of Broward and West Palm Beach areas. A little bit about KW. We provide a full-scale property management services to condominium and homeowners associations, working to maximize property values and create inspired lifestyles for residents to enjoy. Our comprehensive approach includes operations, finances, administration, and concierges services to communities. We also offer different types of levels of services and expertise. Our focus is on building long and lasting relationships, and that's something that I'm extremely proud to say that as a company, we have this knack of really maintaining our clients, and that's what the key, I feel, is in this industry. And we also make sure that those boards, that we're meeting those visions of those boards. KW also services not only the Miami-Dade County, but it services the entire state of Florida, as well as the Bahamas. So really, really happy. I made that pretty quick. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more, but really excited to dive in with everybody to answer some more questions and to have our conversation today.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate that. Finally, Anamarie Melo from Mid-Beach Neighborhood Association.
Thank you, Marcelo. Mid-Beach Neighborhood Association serves to promote and improve the quality of life, common good, and general welfare of hotels and condominiums. The area that we represent extends along Collins Avenue and Indian Creek Drive from 23rd to 64th Street. And our matters of interest include development, beach erosion, street beautification projects, flooding, traffic control and safety, the beach walk, geobonds projects, crime prevention, noise, among other common issues and concerns of all of our condominiums and hotels. Currently, MBNA has 52 active condominium and hotel members and 5 active working groups that try to work on each one of these specific topics in between meetings. During COVID, MBNA played a particular role in communicating, collaborating with condominiums on their protocols and local projects. I have been a Miami Beach resident since 2008 and have served as the president of MBNA since 2017. My background's in epidemiology and public health, and it intersects with housing, development, and property management. So looking at how some of the decisions that you all make impact our community's health and our well-being. And some of the comments that I'm joined, that Carolina and Bruce said a moment ago, I couldn't agree more with, and excited to be here and be part of this panel. So thank you, Marcelo.
Thank you for that. So just some last words before we jump right in. Obviously, we do have what I consider to be a phenomenal panel of experts from multiple areas of the industry. We have the legal expertise, we have the practitioner expertise, and then we have the leadership membership expertise in Anamarie. So overall, it should provide a forum for fruitful conversation, debate, et cetera, which is where the tacit knowledge is exchanged. So with that said, just one final housekeeping item for any participant that has a question, please put it into the chat function. As we get towards the end of the webinar, we'll try to allocate some time. If for any reason there isn't enough time to get to all the questions, I commit to you that I will collaborate with the panelists offline and share your questions with them, and I'll provide you the responses. So with that said, let's get into it. Just to set the stage, the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a global emergency back in January 30th, 2020. Fast forward to today. All the organizations worldwide, whether multinational, private business, et cetera, have had to adapt and innovate to be able to meet the challenges of the current times. Associations and community associations are no different. However, I would say that many of them have adjusted their SOPs, whether it's cleaning, maintenance, et cetera, to meet the demands. However, there's still one area that I think we need to focus on further, which is governance, which is what we're going to chat about. With the backdrop of COVID, the most recent Florida Department of Economic Opportunity report shows that both Miami-Dade and Broward County continue to be amongst the counties with the most unemployment. 13% for Miami-Dade, 8.2% for Broward. The economic impact is obviously felt in South Florida, is palpable and undeniable. That impact is going to trickle down to the associations. How so? Unemployment, members of the community can't pay their association dues, et cetera. That's going to pose a fiscal challenge to the organizations. So a two-part question. Currently facing the board, right, they have to, A, decide whether they're going to fulfill their fiduciary duty and enforce the governing docs on a collection process, liens, foreclosures, et cetera. Or B, do they take the more humanistic approach, given that the world is going through a pandemic, and try to work with the residents and setting up payment plans, et cetera. Both options have benefits and negatives, pros and cons. So Anamarie, I just want to pose to you, given your expertise and your leadership and the multiple hats that you wear as a leading member of your organization, what are some of the things that you have seen through your organization, through your members, that you have personally partaken in that we can share with the panelists that are participating, and obviously the participants to the webinar?
Thank you, Marcelo. Overall, and your question is really more of a general question, correct, Marcelo? Just correct, yeah. Yeah, so overall, I think we've seen, at least in these properties, that concern of just our aggregate living style, and in hotels and across associations and in board of directors. We received many requests from the leadership of the different buildings on what protocols could they put in place to assist them with the annual elections, or maybe there's certain protocols that need to be in place for those that may not be able to meet rent or aren't able to be present because they may be away. Many of our members have buildings that are occupied, or much like the rest of Miami Beach, without residents that are here. And so just listening to all of these issues, and I'm sure we're going to be able to talk about them a little more in detail, hopefully throughout this webinar, really I think what we've tried to do is encourage everyone to be transparent, to increase their level of communication with each other, and to not be worried about sharing these frustrations or difficulties, but rather create some strength in this collective communication and collaboration amongst all of our members. And so folks were, sometimes our board members or board members of the different properties who are members of MBNA were worried to even start the conversation or to open the can per se. And I think this in COVID is a time for us to be compassionate and to listen to everyone's concerns and to try to meet them where they're at, rather than try to only take care of governance or protocols behind the scenes. Really be very transparent about the processes and flexible throughout their experience or interactions with their residents.
Understood. Bruce, quick question for you. As a steward, obviously echoing what Anamarie was saying, as a steward, as practitioners being stewards to the boards, what recommendations is management giving these boards when they present you issues where they have delinquencies that are going through the roof, and they're debating whether or not do they enforce the docs to collect money, understanding that they have to use that money to pay their bills? What are some of the trials and the tribulations and the things that you're facing from the management perspective?
As the professional management team that's on a property, we can only have one recommendation, and that is to, have a fiduciary responsibility to the association itself. You need the money to run and operate and to provide the services. Carolina can also maybe vouch for me that each association has or should have some type of statement or a resolution of something of that nature that talks about if somebody becomes delinquent, whether we're in COVID, whether in so forth. I believe that you can always loosen the reins, just like Anamarie said, is you could be compassionate, but you have to stick to your plan. So if the policy is that in the first 30, you have 30 days, and by the way, and this is where people get confused, maintenance is not due on the 10th of the month. Maintenance is due on the 1st of the month. It's due on the 1st of the month. Because your association declaration might say you might have some lead time, that doesn't mean it's not due on the 1st of the month. So you have your policy, it's 30 days, boom, you're sending it to the attorney, or you might go into a discussion and a follow-up, and maybe, but understand, once you start to cut deals with people, then you're going to have to cut the same deal with somebody else. Now, not to get too technical, but just to give you a quick overview of what we've seen across the board, I don't see many associations having problems collecting their fees these days. I don't. And I just got off a board meeting, for example, of a very, very large homeowners association with over 3,000 homes. And believe it or not, this is their best year of collecting. So, again, everybody's been worried. What that's going to happen, through next year, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But I'm not seeing in our organization, and being a forerunner, a forefront company that one of people recognizes us as, really exceptional accounting, I'm telling you, I'm looking at benchmarks and things of that nature, and I don't see that as much. But if I'm advising my client right now, stick to your plan, really stick to it, and then make some decisions. And I would suggest also consult your counsel. Definitely get counsel in there and understand the ramifications that you might have from a legal standpoint.
Speaking of counsel, Carolina, what advice can you share from a legal perspective for those board members that may say, Bruce, I appreciate the feedback, I appreciate sticking to the plan, but it's hard for me to enforce that plan on neighbor Joe Schmo, who's my buddy, who has just gotten laid off, has 4 kids, has to pay their mortgage. And I'm sure you live with this on a daily basis where you're advising your clients, right? What words of wisdom or I don't want to say legal advice, but what are your best practices are you seeing, Carolina?
So I have to play a fine line of sounding completely robotic and unemotional with what people are facing these days. However, as an association attorney, I cannot stress the importance of having your collections plan in place, applying it uniformly, and taking immediate action. For those associations that endured the last economic crisis, those associations that stuck to their guns, stuck to their budgets, continued their maintenance protocols, and were very aggressive. And I'm going to say, I'll define aggressive versus punitive or unhumanly. But those who were very aggressive with their collections practices at the last economic downturn are in much better shape today than those associations that had huge collections issues, that delayed on their collections practices, that cut back on their maintenance, routine maintenance, because remember, we still have to clean the pools. We still have to, more than ever, maintain these buildings in a sanitary manner. Somebody has to pay the bills. And so if we cut slack one way, we're going to end up not being able to feed our association later on. What I mean about an aggressive collections policy, there are certain timelines that you have to meet in a collections period. So if your association has a delinquent unit, and many of the mid-beach associations, we could be looking at a couple of $1,000s a month, depending on the condominium, in maintenance fees. If you delay sending something to collections for 3 months, so that's 90 days, then the attorney has to send a 30-day letter, so that's 120 days. Then there's the lien letter, another 30 days, 150 days. Then another 30 days to file a lawsuit. You've gone 6 months now without collecting critical funds that are needed for this association. So what I mean about being aggressive is nip it in the bud early on. And if people are in financial hardship and they're requesting payment plans, you work with them. But at the same time, you keep a tight leash on what your process is, because if that person defaults or does not comply by their agreement, then you have some other recourse and you don't have to start all over again and wait another 6 months before you even get any type of relief. So that's what I mean about being aggressive. It doesn't mean that you are chasing people down for money. It means that you are adhering to your policy. And I don't want to belabor the point, but we're all very used to come June 1st, come May 1st, we start preparing for hurricanes. And when we watch the cone of concern, well, now's the time to prepare. Actually, the time to prepare was several months ago, but I still say now's the time to prepare. It's never too late. Set your policy in place. Let all your unit owners know of the policy. Work with your association's management team and your attorney to streamline your policy, and that will help along the way.
So before I just turn it over to Anamarie, just a follow-up question for you, Carolina. When you say set your policy, can you elaborate on the process? Is it a board resolution that has to be executed? How would the board, for any participant that may be here inquiring what the policy or how is a policy established, can you just elaborate a little bit on that for them?
So fortunately for our boards and our management, a large portion of the policy is set already by your association's governing documents and by Florida statute. So your association's governing documents will let you know when the assessment is due, when it's deemed late, whether you can collect late fees, because remember, not every association is able to collect late fees, and your interest. Now, if your documents don't talk about interest, statutorily it's 18%. But there are some associations that have a lesser interest. There are some associations that have some nuances about the first notice or when it can, things of that nature. But generally speaking, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Most of your policy is set forth in your governing documents. What I mean about more of a specific policy, things to consider. When do you refer it to the attorney? Is it logical to refer to the attorney within the first 30 days? Perhaps not, okay? But after the 30 days, you want to make that consideration. Should we send it over to the attorney? Are you going to adopt the policy of tenant rent collections? Because there are a lot of unit owners that are renting a unit, and that's a big source of income, and that was a big relief during a lapse wave. Is there a warning letter that's sent out? Some associations choose to do a warning letter, others don't. That's strictly up to the association. And last but not least, and this is very helpful to your management and to your association, is there a standard payment plan that you will authorize your attorney to enter into, or even to your management company to enter into without having to go through the back and forth with the board? Some associations establish a policy that they will automatically agree to a 3-month payment plan or a 6-month payment plan. That speeds up the process significantly because we are not wasting time going back and forth. Well, what do you propose? What do you propose? The association automatically authorizes me as the attorney to say, if you wish to enter into a payment plan, I am authorized to offer you a 6-month payment plan, for example. And if that person wants something different, then we escalate it to the board. But in the meantime, we've streamlined the process.
Outstanding, outstanding. Anamarie, I know you had a comment that you wanted to share.
Yes, thanks, Marcelo. I think the process that Carolina you're describing, and Bruce, to restate what you said earlier, and we couldn't agree more. At MBNA, we constantly are telling everyone, go back to your legal documents, go back to your protocols, and stick to them. But we're also saying that in these times, Carolina, when you were describing the process, like maybe at 30 days, you don't send it to the lawyer. Well, normally, if it's in their protocols, we tell them, please do send it. One strategy that they've implemented, that several of them have started implementing, that they've told us have been successful, is that the management has been doing videos. And the videos are describing what is written. Folks are overwhelmed with emails right now, and they're overwhelmed with the amount of information that they're receiving and the postings that are coming up, especially if they're in other states dealing with COVID or dealing with the issues back home. And so these videos are very easy for folks the text messaging has also become more popular. And so instead of reaching out to them at 10 days or 15 days where they normally might, they have their assistant managers are really dedicated to the first line of communication. And by the third day, fourth day, they don't get payment, they're giving a call. What we are also hearing is that folks are concerned about tenants. They're not able to move tenants out that are delinquent or that are not paying, and therefore they're kind of receiving this brunt of having to pay upfront, and then now it's compounded with what their situation may be wherever they're living or wherever their primary property is. And so those situations, again, are really, we're trying to encourage folks to have more checks and balances to be able to demonstrate that compassion and be able to open the lines of communication, because they are more needed now than ever before. And that's the kind of conversation we've been having a little more openly, and been providing different practices that have worked better for some properties and for others, and just kind of exploring some of those strategies.
Outstanding. I mean, I would say that my takeaway is focus on your policy and communication, right? I think everybody would agree that too much communication is not a bad thing. Obviously, and especially given the times, policy and communication around your fiscal association fiscal policy is what appears to be the common theme amongst you all. So that's great feedback. Want to switch gears a little bit on the same line of policy. There was a recent CHI survey. CHI is the Community Association Institute, that says that 67% of respondents noticed an increase in home-based business operating in communities during this pandemic. Despite that increase, 83% say that the covenants of their community specifically restrict home-based businesses from opening in HOAs. I know condominiums, some have the same verbiage as well. While the boards may decide to take a more flexible approach, are they exposing the association to a dangerous precedent where said provisions could become unenforceable in the future? Are the exceptions only temporary due to the pandemic? Should they pass formal resolutions quantifying the exception due to the times? Carolina, given your legal understanding, I would pose this one in your ballpark to see your feedback.
So it poses a very interesting question because it's an unforeseen consequence of the lockdown. I generally speaking, the business prohibition that we envision is a prohibition that involves an increase or taxation upon the amenities or the association itself, where you have a revolving door of clients coming in and out. Clearly during COVID, we don't want that. Where you have an increase in package deliveries. If someone's running a business that involves a lot of UPS shipment, clearly we don't want that either, because most of our associations, especially the older buildings, are overwhelmed with package deliveries right now because the buildings, frankly, were not designed for being a mailbox, et cetera, type place. So I think that right now, an association that were to challenge somebody working from their home as a home office would have an uphill battle given the circumstances. Of course, there are extremes. Someone like me as an attorney can work from home without having clients coming in and out, without affecting the parking, without taxing the building itself or creating a situation where it's interfering with the rights of other unit owners. If we have the extreme situation or the opposite situation where someone is basically running a Amazon hub or an eBay hub, or there's a revolving door of clients coming in, that's where we're going to run perhaps into an issue later on, and it could be argued that there could be a waiver by the association. Notwithstanding, the association should enforce its rules and regulations uniformly. So it applies to everybody, not just for the one business that perhaps somebody doesn't like. If somebody's doing it and you challenge it, you have to make sure that you're challenging everybody across the board. Right now, though, I would think it would be a very unpopular decision to try to challenge everyone who's working from a home office if it's not taxing or causing an interference with the operations of the association.
Fair enough, fair enough. Bruce, from your perspective, from the practitioner perspective, have you encountered any challenges or concerns being raised to the managers in reference to this influx of, maybe as Carolina just said, a home-run business having, increased foot traffic, package delivery, et cetera? And if so, what are some of the recommendations that your managers are providing to the board to address these?
Well, it's not only those things that we're experiencing, but we're in budget season. So, things like greater, water usage in condominium buildings and greater uses of facilities and, the sanitation and the sanitizing of things require greater amount of manpower and so forth. So we've been cautioning our boards to, everybody's saying, let's make sure that we keep these budgets flat and people can't afford them. Well, in essence, electric, all those things, they're on the rise. Your elevators are being used more now and so forth. So you have to be very, very careful on that. I agree with everything that Anamarie and Carolina said, but then there's that other perspective that we need to make sure that we're careful about, which is a different spin on some things that we're bringing into this season, which is our budgeting season, which is out there. The other thing that we're also making sure in regards to this is election season too. So, there's been visions and there's been different things that our current boards are doing right now, but we all know, in our condominiums, you get to serve, maybe 1 year and then you're out, or hopefully you get the 2 years and then we have some, but hopefully, those visions move forward. It's ironic that we're dealing with a national scene also of trying to move our country forward. But imagine it's the same thing in condominiums that, we're in that election season. We're trying to move our, associations forward to try to act as the new norm from that end. So I see 2021, us having to tweak that and us really having to be very careful of the stuff that we're moving forward with.
Absolutely. And going back to what you just mentioned about budget season and annual budgets, obviously the state of the times with the second wave or third wave, depending on who's giving the opinion, is going to pose additional challenges, right, for annual membership meetings, elections. What are some of the recommendations that you can provide on navigating these challenges? For example, HOAs you usually have nominations from the floor. Obviously, in a COVID environment where we can't congregate and get together, that poses a challenge. What are some advices, Bruce or Carolina, or even you, Anamarie, based on what you're hearing in your world? How are you guys navigating that challenge, and what best practices can you recommend?
Ladies first, or I'll jump in real quick. What's really strange about the whole thing is that when this all broke out back last year in March, we had many associations that put off their elections because they didn't know what to do. There wasn't really a protocol out there. We went to our attorneys and said, what do we do? And then probably 3 months into it, all of a sudden everybody said, well, we're going to get into the Zoom mode. We're going to get into this technology, Teams, and all this other stuff. And that's become the new norm. It's become the norm that we have done, I think, an incredible job of working together with boards, with attorneys, with management companies. We've done this really, really well to be able to function with board meetings now. Actually, they've been more productive board meetings, in all due respect. They're very productive meetings, and I think we get a lot more accomplished, but we're really not just board meetings, but annual meetings too. If you're doing that, then we're trying to limit the amount of people coming. If an association, for example, I had one where we had the election monitors, we asked for 3 or 4 representatives of the community. We put it in a room with social distancing. We had the laptop up. We had our attorney that wasn't even there. The attorney was on Zoom there. And we had our manager there, our district manager, and we ran an election, and our attorney certified it there from that end. So there are ways to do this well, safe, legally, from our attorneys. But I definitely think that each attorney, I just got off a webinar with the ombudsman, from the state. That was yesterday that I appeared with the ombudsman, and he was fantastic. If anyone caught that, or if you want to, you could go onto our YouTube channel and you could take a look at that hour session that we had with the ombudsman from the state of Florida, and that was fantastic. And he went over some things from his office on how elections are being run and so forth. And people are welcome to check out our YouTube channel. Just go onto KWPMC, do a search, and you'll find our YouTube channel, and you can get some more information on how the ombudsman even offered his opinion of how to do elections.
Outstanding. Anamarie, I know you had, real quick, Carolina, I know Anamarie had a comment that she wanted to share for feedback.
Yeah, Carolina, feel free to jump in.
So,
Carolina.
Whenever we talk about how we've handled elections in COVID, I think back to my very first election during COVID, which was probably a week after the shutdown. And my family was very, very upset that I was going to go to a meeting with anybody there. And we all showed up with hoodies and masks and gloves. All precautions were taken. What have I learned? Condo associations, HOAs are separate. Condo association elections via Zoom have been wonderful, much more effective. We have a protocol that we've set up in our office on how to guide our associations to do it. We set up, we still have our counters if it's available. I'm there. I have a member of management. The board can stay on Zoom. We don't need to have extra people in the room. And it goes very, very smoothly. And the beauty of it is everybody can see what's going on. And you don't have that background noise of the chitter chatter during the meeting that is so distracting, where I have to kind of be going like this, please be quiet, please be quiet. So what is my recommended way of doing things? My recommended way of doing things is as follows. In my notices, I explained that due to COVID, we're going to be doing this via Zoom. And I've come up with a Q&A memorandum, per se, that we distribute together with our meeting notices, explaining how the process is going to work so that there are no questions, no surprises. And what we explain is the goal of this is and the goal throughout COVID is, you have to continue to operate your condominium, okay? You have to make adjustments or adjust to the situation, but at the end of the day, you have to continue to follow the spirit of the law and the spirit of your governing documents. So in my opinion, currently for condominium associations, there are no barriers to conducting your annual meeting and election. There are no barriers to conducting your budget meeting. At this point, we've resolved as attorneys collectively, we've resolved all of those kinks for condo associations. HOAs is a little bit more complicated because of the structure of an HOA election, particularly where you have nominations from the floor. Again, the beauty of, or unfortunately or fortunately, the beauty of being under a state of emergency is that we are allowed to alter our procedures for meetings, and we operate under the, okay, we have to do an election because we can't just turn this into mayhem. And we are going to have an election and try to adhere to the spirit of your governing documents with slight modifications to account for COVID. So for those of you who are concerned of doing an election, call your attorney, call me. We know how to do this. Our management teams have gotten very good at this. We've been working wonderfully together with managers to get it done. And it's gone from a very scary process at first to a, oh my God, I never want to have a live election ever again because this is so much more streamlined. So, you know, it's a process, it's working, and it takes a little bit of adjustment. The other thing that I want to bring up that's become very, very a useful tool, however, it's not fully, it's got a lot of kinks, and I'll be the first to say there are a lot of kinks. It's not regulated sufficiently, but electronic voting has become an increasingly popular mechanism for associations. Why do I like electronic voting, particularly right now? Because we have a lot, particularly here in South Florida, we have a lot of foreign investor owners, we have part-timers, we have snowbirds who cannot come here. We've had issues with the mailing system. So electronic voting can be a headache. Okay, I'm not saying it's the end all be all. There are so many kinks to it, and I could have a whole webinar about the kinks that I see with it. However, during these times, it's giving your membership an opportunity to participate. And actually, you will find that members are participating more now, thanks to Zoom and thanks to some of our communication strategies than ever before. I'm seeing much more participation than ever before. So I strongly urge our communities to consider online voting as a mechanism to allow greater participation by your unit owners. And we'll get to the kinks later because overall, I think it does have its benefits.
Outstanding. Good stuff, Carolina. Anamarie?
Similar to the other panelists, MBNA was hearing about elections and going through this process for the different members throughout COVID. So for our members that are having elections now towards the end of the year or are looking at their budgets now for next year or their fiscal, they follow the fiscal year of January to December, it's easier for them because they have had this time of lessons learned. And one thing that we've done in MBNA amongst all the members is that we've shared different apps that folks have considered for their online voting. We've also just shared form-based forms that are online based that folks have also used. So maybe a platform that has been more, that has been easier, or if folks have a larger population of individuals that may not be as accustomed to using online or electronic tools, like maybe there is a larger group of older adults in the building. How do they navigate that, and what is the easiest way for folks to go about, even in the bylaws, the letter of intents of how their letter of intents have to be submitted, communicating those opportunities. What we've seen in the membership has told us that they've had less people submitting letters of intents this year than in the past, but it's not because they have less interest, they have more interest, but because there's more openness in the communications and with the Zooms, there's greater participation, and folks feel like they're more aware, and they feel better about how the leadership is actually doing rather than thinking or criticizing maybe some of the decisions that are being made. They don't feel like everything's being done behind doors anymore, but it's a little more transparent. And that has helped strengthen the leadership of the associations and the condominiums that, the condo associations that participate in our meetings. And again, it's just really been a great platform to be able to learn from each other and figure out best practices. One topic that has come up continuously, a few weeks ago, the Academy for Medicine put out when they think the vaccines and how many millions will be out in December. And one of the topics that came up in one of our recent work group meetings was, now that because MBNA played a role in trying to get some information out early in COVID, what will we do and how will that impact some of our protocols locally of everybody living together? And what would associations' roles be? And as we know, associations' roles are really just to put protocols in place to be healthy and safe, but as we kind of transition in. And so that's just another topic that I think it's again, we're still in that very early phase of those discussions, but as we continue to share best practices, it's just been beneficial for us.
Absolutely. What I would say is, before pivoting, we have about 5 to 7 minutes before we open up for Q&A. definitely Carolina and Anamarie, I would love to collaborate in the future to discuss the kinks on the meetings. Be able to provide another forum with Bruce as well for the participants. But obviously, associations, management, stakeholders all have to innovate to continue to conduct business. That's obviously real and palpable. So it's refreshing to see how associations have navigated that process and have modified to be able to continue to meet the needs and the demands of the residents to make sure that they're in compliance.
Marcelo,
so that being said,
Marcelo, I just want to jump in. Really, the question is, what's going to happen when we do get back to normal? I bet you people are really going to like this. So I think our attorneys are going to say, well, how do we really continue this? Because it really has been a very effective way for everyone to do it. So that's what I'm keen on. And, let's speak in a year or two and let's see if people really catch on to say, we want to make this the norm. So just wanted to throw that in.
Well, I would go out on a limb and say that, recent research studies have shown that telework has proven to be more efficient and productive. So echoing your sentiment, I'm pretty sure that when we circle back around, we're probably going to see a lot more of this environment moving forward.
It depends if you have 5-year-olds at home driving you crazy. That I would say personally, telework has not worked for me.
Understood. So just wanted to pivot really quick and change the theme a little bit under the governance piece to the communication piece within governance. Obviously, I'm sure everybody would agree that community association managers and their legal teams continue to be focal in how associations navigate through this pandemic. And obviously, we're in snowbird season. So with many of snowbirds coming back into town from other parts of the country or even internationally, with different COVID procedures, et cetera, enforcement, what are some suggestions that the panelists, you guys can recommend in terms of communicating said procedures, meaning procedures that are specific to your association with the residents? How are said procedures being enforced? Are they being violations, fines, et cetera? I'm confident that many boards and CAMs are dealing with this now, right? Where they have differences of people that want to wear masks, don't want to wear masks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Bruce, from an operational standpoint, how are your teams, and then Carolina and Anamarie as well, Bruce, how are your teams that are on the front lines dealing with this challenge? Or is it even a challenge? I don't know.
Well, it's a challenge, but not a challenge, because, we already have established the protocol in most of our associations. Our associations have established a protocol that we are following. So if you want to say, from where was it at the beginning, it was very strict. Some of the associations have loosened up and so forth, and they will continue that. But again, the question goes back to your board and your specific association. Where do they want to take it? I just went into an opportunity that we were presented, and I went to the front desk. They're taking temperatures. They're going through a questionnaire, asking each visitor, will you this, and this? And they've adopted that policy through their association, which is very stringent, if you want to say. And then I have associations, just walk in, come on, walk in. You've got to have your mask on, but 2 in an elevator. And then there are some that really are not enforcing it as much as they should. I think that's, again, it's up to your board. Management could give you, the benchmarks of what's happening. Someone like our company, we have many associations, so we're able to give you really good information. But then then there's laws, and Anamarie could tell you, what is her world, giving us, what do they recommend? Then I've got to turn to the attorney and say, well, what can I really do? Am I really violating people? A lot of snowbirds we haven't seen as many coming yet. I think after Thanksgiving, we're going to see a lot more coming down here. Other states, as we know, are getting worse, especially the northern states are getting worse. So if I'm going to make a recommendation, these discussions should have either already happened or start making them happen, because you really need to be equipped to know what you're going to do. So by the time somebody comes, you're not going to sit there and say, or twirl your thumbs and say, what do we do? And that's especially with some of these buildings that have short-term rentals. There's plenty of them that are out there that are, I'm sorry to say, the Airbnb business is still going, and hopefully you're presenting that. But what are we doing to really make sure that we're protected? And the game plan is so important to have now.
Understood. Carolina, from your perspective, for those boards that find themselves in that pickle, right, where they have those residences that are coming in and come from a state that is completely open and don't want to wear the masks and are dealing with this challenge. What have you seen any challenges like that from current clients, or what best practices or recommendations could you give some of the participants?
So it's a bit of a tricky situation, and I have no right answer to provide because it's such an evolving situation. And when we initially locked down, we took a very tough approach. No one can come in, no guests, no this, no that. Then we started to see that you can't be so hard-lined on it because there are exceptions to every rule. You have to evaluate every case-by-case basis. The perfect example I give was no visitors or no outside vendors. Well, somebody gets a masseuse that comes to the building, they weren't being allowed, but somebody might have a medical condition that requires a particular treatment, and you can't deny that either. The big one that we had also with, the kids are home. My kids are home. Your kids are home. Kids are home. They need to be entertained. They need to be watched after. What about nannies? What about families that are split families, divorced families, where they're living in two separate households, but fortunately for that particular family, they get along well together and they're cooperating, where mom comes over dad's house and takes care of the kids at dad's house. Are you telling me that mom can't come in and take care of the children who are lawful residents of the unit? Those are all issues that we're coming up with. The other issue that I'm having is we locked down, then we started to ease restrictions. Now we're into another wave. We're going to lock back. Are we going to lock back down again? We have a lot of people who don't want to lock down. We have a lot of people coming. It's not just people who are coming from other states. We have the problem here with our current residents. So we really do have to address a policy. Keep in mind that as an association, you can adopt more stringent rules than what is allowed. So if you are not required in your municipality to be wearing a mask at all times, doesn't mean that you can't require it in your common elements. Enforcement is a problem, however, though. You don't want your staff, your front door staff, your security staff to be engaging in consistent altercations with members who don't want to comply. Likewise, the issue of violations is not always the best method. If your association doesn't have a violations committee in place, you can't impose a fine or suspension of use rights. Or you may be in an association that doesn't have a control, what I call the controlled building, meaning access control, someone monitoring the pool area, so on and so forth, and you can't control who's coming in and who's coming out if you want to suspend their use rights. So communication is key. Management needs to work very hard on de-escalation techniques because a lot of this ends up being escalate. So it's very important for management and board members to work on de-escalation. Board members, you hired management for a reason. You should not be engaging in these discussions with the members. The members need to follow a chain of command and a chain of communication, communicate to management, who then will communicate with the board. So your question is a loaded question, and I would say it's not an issue of outsiders coming in, because the issue really is who's already in our buildings and who's not adhering to the rules in our own buildings. And, at the onset of this, I could go on for hours, I'm sorry.
No, absolutely.
At the onset of this, we were worried about one person being contagious and how we were going to contain that one person. As a standard practice, what I tell all the buildings is you are to assume that everybody has it, okay? It's not an isolated incident. Everybody has it. You are also to assume that your key person, whether it be your property manager or your president or whoever has the control, not necessarily the control, but the major knowledge and decision maker, has to assume that they're going to say it in a very basic way, go down. You need to have backups in place. You need to have procedures in place, because unfortunately, this problem's not going away whether a vaccine comes in or not in the near future. It's going to take a while, so we need to modify our way of operating and being flexible.
Absolutely, that's phenomenal feedback, Carolina. Obviously, we are up against a hard stop, but definitely there's so much information that we can have 3, 4, 5 additional webinars on multiple topics alone. I mean, I had a plethora of questions I didn't even get to. But before we wrap up, what I do want to do, I don't see any questions that have come through. So what I want to do is allow each one of you to provide final words of wisdom to the attendees. Then we'll go to closing statement and we'll end the webinar. So Carolina, would you care to start with some final words of wisdom?
I don't know about wisdom. However, we want to just exercise calm, rational decision making. Consult as association members. You want to consult with your teams. Consult with your vendors. Consult with your manager. Consult with your attorney for budgeting purposes. Look at your budgets carefully. Budgets right now are a little bit out of whack because of all the different changes and the buildings are taxed right now because of all this. So avail yourselves of your consultants and your experts. I can't emphasize education and knowledge is the most important thing that we have right now. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Bruce, how about you?
Look, these are unprecedented times. We have learned to live through them. Boards, both in the condo and HOA world, we have shown that we could adapt through what Carolina said is through the professionals, through your manager, your management company, through your attorneys, through those people that are out there. Don't do it on your own. Get some advice, make good decisions that are out there. The associations that I encounter, they're all doing really, really well because people are listening. I think that if there's anything that people are doing now is they're listening more, they're paying attention to the experts that are out there. They're trying to make the best decisions. And those that are on the call, board members have a tough job. They've got to make these decisions. They're not always right. They're just like everybody else that's out there. They're people paying in just like you are and so forth, and they don't have the right answers either. So sometimes it's trial and error. If we continue to be patient with each other, be respectful of each other, and make sure that we are all, wearing our PPE, wear the mask. It's not going to kill you. It really isn't. Wash your hands, social distance. We have an opportunity to really look back and say we got through this together and we could do that together. And especially during the holiday times, this is really a time to really, think twice. Do you really want to gather with a lot of people? Do you really want to, start moving around and trying to, really get into a situation where you might jeopardize your health or anything? Think twice before you do that, because having a safe holiday is better than having, a holiday that is really, out there with a whole bunch of people that you're going to pay the price for it.
Absolutely. Great stuff, Bruce. And finally, Anamarie.
Just want to thank you all for this opportunity, and my final thoughts really proceed or align with what we had said earlier. Just keep the communication open, try to be creative in your procedures internally, and really encourage this kind of collective communication with other associations, with other condominiums, and so that together we can figure out how to best deal with this. Thank you.
Absolutely. So what I would say is that wraps up. Unfortunately, we went over a little bit, but the conversation was, I found fruitful, beneficial. So I thank all the panelists for taking their time to join us today. Hopefully our participants walked away with some additional knowledge, a little nugget of information that they can bring back to their associations or their management teams. we at Hotwire Communications are obviously committed to continue to provide these type of forums. We believe heavily in educating the community, our guests, our members on relevant and practice, relevant information topics. That they should be involved in. So, with that said, thank you, everyone. Remain safe. Have a happy holiday, and hopefully we'll have a part 2 in the very near future. So, with that said, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.